There is also even that division between the African brothers who come from Africa. They call us Africans. And then there are African Americans who, like the black folks in America. Welcome, folks. Welcome back to the America Podcast Nation. Hey, my name is Pascal Bispas, and I'm your host. So today, actually, we're just going to be talking about some messages to our brothers and sisters here in America and elsewhere in the world. I'm just going to speak in English because this message maybe concerns mostly people who speak English. So, my brothers and sisters, especially my black brothers, African American, African European, African England. I don't know how they call them in England. African, French? In France. How do they call them in France? So this message is for us. Well, here in America, they call them African Americans. I don't know why they call us African American, because me personally, you can even hear from my tone of voice, I come from Africa. And I come from this country called the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It's right in the middle of Africa. So, I am wearing black today. If you see me wearing black, it's because I wanted to pass this message straight to your heart in the black way possible. Well, if I say something that is not aligning with your mentality or maybe your trust or your guts or everything that rhymes with your belief and your personality, I would like to ask for just a chance to explain myself why I'm speaking from my own perspective, okay? So, guys, we as Africans, we have to come to terms and start appreciating each other and start loving each other. Before we can even spread the love to any other person, we have to start appreciating each other, believing in each other, trusting in each other, and then building that big bond, big togetherness, big Africanship. How do I call it? Well, as I was saying, here in America, they call the black folks African American, yet they're Americans. Though just because of the color of their skin, but they're Americans. Maybe they should call them black Americans, not African Americans, because they don't live in Africa. They live in America. And that's why I was saying I don't know how they call Africans living in other places in the world, but why am I saying this? Why am I saying all this? Why am I trying to break down our identity of Africans? It's because I want us to help each other in tackling some serious issues that are happening in Africa right now. You know? And that's why I'm saying if we don't spread that love from America, from the UK, from Europe, from France, whatever, everywhere where a black person is, if we don't spread that love to our brothers and sisters who are on the continent, on the African continent, there is no way we can know how to fix or find solutions in order to help and assist other people who look like us. Let's start from ourselves before we can start sharing this big love we have with the rest of the world. I believe we can do this. I really believe we can do this if we come together. And I've seen it happen. I've seen it when people try to show that they're annoyed of what is happening. I've seen it in here in America. One time there was a lot of problems with the police, where there was a lot of brutality, killings, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many other people who were not really famous in the news. We saw black people coming together. I don't know from which kind of force they were calling it Black Lives Matter. Well, that was like an orchestrated movement. and it came like bushfire. And then after that, I don't know if it still exists or it disappeared, or I don't know. Or if it was politically motivated, I don't know. But that gesture was good. We saw a black love, people showing love for each other. And we were like, okay, this movement can really help if it goes broader than just America. Black lives matter. Well, all lives matter. Even white lives matter. Every life matters. Yellow life matters. Asian lives matter. Everybody's life matters. But I'm talking about when we saw that love of African brotherhood here in America trying to come up and show dissatisfaction, saying the police is killing our brothers and sisters, why aren't you guys, the government, doing anything about it? We were all like, okay, this is good. Well, it ended up being politicized. A lot of things started happening. They started bringing a lot of maybe things that this group was not doing, and also there was a lot of money involved in such a way that it became a mess. So I don't know if that movement still exists. But why am I saying about that movement? Because we saw that if Africans come together, maybe we can create something for the future of ourselves and the people who are going to come after us, the generation that is going to follow us. Well, brothers and sisters, we've seen you flocking Ghana recently. We've seen you guys going like, you want to go to Ghana, you want to identify with Ghana because Ghana was like the port of exit from Africa. So I just wanted to mention this. Well, our brothers in Ghana, they know very well how this went down. But people did not just come from Ghana. When all that craziness of slave trade was happening, people, black folks, black skin, they came from everywhere in Africa. They came from South Africa. They came from the East Africa. They came from the Central Africa. They came from the Congo. They came from Nigeria. They came from, I don't know much about the Upper East or maybe the Arab or the people close to the Sahara Desert or the African Maghreb. They call them the African Maghreb. But that tells you that the people did not just come from Ghana. And so my brothers and sisters in America, black people, black folks, you just did not come from Ghana. You came from so many other places. And that's why even those things of DNA, sometimes I think they are not accurate. If you try, you will find like you have a blood in Italy, you have blood in, I don't know, Indonesia. And you ask yourself, how did this happen? But if you want to identify yourself with the African Brotherhood, the people in Africa, please don't limit yourself just in Ghana. Look around, try to document yourself. You always hear that Africa is a dangerous place. That's why people don't want to go there, don't want to set up shop there. They don't want to just even go visit that place. It's because, yes, I come from Africa and I'll tell you, some parts of Africa are safe, but some other parts are really, really messed up. And why are they messed up? It's of our own ego, our own hypocrisy, our own, like, how do you call it? Like hate. We hate each other. We break each other down in Africa like crazy. And this is part of the colonization that divided people. But after that, after the colonization, we also had these tribal divisions, a lot that divided Africa. Now, that division has caused big problems. Problems of nationality, problems of ethnicity, problems of belonging to a certain nation, a certain part of the continent. and it's a mess. And that's why you hear there is a war. This party is fighting with this part. This brother is fighting with this brother. Yet we are all Africans. We look the same. We look alike. But when it comes to tearing down our own brothers and sisters, oh my God, it's on a different level. And that's why I want to urge African brothers who are living in America. Please, let's start communicating. Because there is also even that division between the African brothers who come from Africa. They call us Africans. And then there are African Americans who, like the black folks in America, they have a different English. Their English is way, way different. The way they speak English is totally different. If you go to Atlanta, you go to Mississippi, or you go to Philadelphia, New York, LA, Los Angeles, Texas, Houston is a hub. Let me tell you, the English is totally different, but we try as much as possible to understand what they're saying. Sometimes they're speaking in tongues, in slang, we cannot understand, but we love it just because we all look alike, you know? Guys, we want you to help us to understand how to live together, how to live like hustlers, how to survive as a group of people. I'm speaking to you because there's a big problem in Africa right now. Just out of these divisions, the wars that break out, one of the biggest that has broken out right now is the one that is happening in the Congo. There's a war that is happening in the Congo, and it's pissing everybody off. Because this mayhem has been there for the last 30 years. 30 years, just factions fighting factions. There was a genocide that caused all this. And after that genocide was in a neighboring country, that neighboring country called Rwanda. And that genocide sparked the craziest violence in the whole Central Africa. Now, we are trying to find solutions for it. And we want you guys to join our fight because we cannot finish this fight on our own. We want every brother, every sister who look like me to join this fight. If you did not know about what happens in Africa, this is the time for you to start saying, okay, we want to start arranging Africa. We want to start cleansing Africa because who knows, if I get deported tomorrow, I'll go to a safer Africa, not an Africa where people are tearing each other down. Or if we decide to just say, I'm tired of living in America, I want to go and first eat some real food in Africa, we can go and enjoy ourselves because Africa is beautiful, man. Africa is beautiful. If we did not have these fights, stupid fights, we could be the best ever version of a society, of humanity that could have ever happened. But here in America, we always have all those wrangles, people fighting. But right now, I'm talking about what happens in Africa. So, to heal this wound, we all have to first clean it up, fix it, talk, communicate, and then condemn. Let's condemn these violences. And we can't do it alone. We want you guys to join our fight. Okay? This is a Mafrica podcast, meaning we are mixing America and Africa. We want to find a great solution for our people. You know, the way we are trying to put this podcast, we all know how people get divided when it comes to political views, when it comes to identity, when it comes to social class or anything. We cannot start creating love and communication with another race, with another group of people before we can fix our own. We have to first fix our own. And when we fix our own, We even fix our roots. Let's fix our roots because that's Africa. Guys, I please urge you to share this message with whoever is willing and loving to help Africa to stand up on their feet. We've been lied to for a long time, but now every lie is coming to life. We are seeing the truth now, And gladly we have social media. Everything is now clear. Information is passing. We are no longer being lied to just like that. We have to make some researches. So guys, I urge you to please join our forces so we can end these wars in Africa. We have a force. We saw some guys actually bearing arms in Atlanta, in somewhere. What can we use the knowledge? We can use this knowledge to cleanse Africa. We can use this force. We can use these guys to help us at least tell the brothers and sisters down there that, you know what, guys, why are we tearing each other apart? Yet we have the chance to live together and build a better future for our children.
Did you know that there's probably a piece of this country in your smartphone? The Democratic Republic of the Congo, or DRC, could be one of the richest countries in the world. That's because of what lies below the ground here. Vast resources such as gold, cobalt, and coltan. But the DRC is not rich. In fact, many Congolese people are among the world's poorest.
Congo is basically a resource-endowed country, but it is also a resource-cursed country.
And it's home to possibly the deadliest conflict since World War II. We're going to look at how the DRC became a looting ground for the power-hungry and the corporate, and how even its neighbors have a hand in the exploitation. This is the Democratic Republic of the Congo, also known as the DRC, or sometimes just the Congo. Not to be confused with its neighbor, the Republic of the Congo. The DRC is the largest country in sub-Saharan Africa, and it's bordered by 9 countries. One of them, Rwanda, actually plays a big role in this tragedy. We'll come back to that later. An estimated 110 million people live here in the DRC. 3 out of 4 of them often don't have access to even the basics: shelter, clean drinking water, and enough food. 1 in 12 children here dies before the age of 12. The DRC is among the 5 poorest countries in the world. It's this misery that drives hundreds of thousands of Congolese to work in mining sites like this one, and that's where we want to start this story. This is dangerous work in dangerous conditions, and for just a few dollars a day. Child labor, threats and violence are often reported, not to mention the vast environmental damage. All these things are happening because of the rush for riches under the ground. An estimated $24 trillion worth of minerals lie beneath the surface.
You have a country that is effectively one of the richest countries in the world, certainly the wealthiest country in Africa, with all kinds of resources that you can imagine, some of which have not even been discovered.
This is Paul Nantulia. He works at the Africa Center for Strategic Studies in Washington, D.C.
You talk of any resource, name it, it is in the Congo in plenty.
For instance, gold, for jewelry and electronics. Cobalt, used for batteries like in electric cars. The DRC has more than half of the world's cobalt reserves. Copper, vital for solar panels. And coltan, it's literally everywhere in electronic devices, for example, in your smartphone. An estimated 60 to 80% of global coltan reserves are in the DRC. So you can imagine everybody wants a piece of this pie. Be they militia groups controlling informal mines, or huge multinational companies that have set up massive industrial complexes. This map shows some of the DRC's major industrial cobalt, copper, and gold mines. So who owns these mines? Well, the DRC has a minority share in many of them, but almost all are majority foreign-owned, some by a Swiss company, Glencore, then there are firms from Canada and the United Arab Emirates, but the most important player here is China. The red dots are majority Chinese-owned mines. Since the 1990s, China has been forging ties with the DRC, gaining more and more control over the DRC's valuable natural resources. By the way, this huge mine was owned by a US company until the 2010s, but was sold off to a Chinese firm. A step the US government now regrets because it could really use those resources to build electric cars. Chinese companies control 70% of the copper mining and 50% of the cobalt mining in the DRC. Let's take this huge copper and cobalt mining site. It's been majority Chinese-owned since the DRC and China struck a deal in 2008, the Sycamines Agreement. The deal was about investment. In return for access to the mine, China pledged to build roads, schools, and hospitals. Sounds like a win-win situation, right? But not much of the promised investment has materialized. Congolese people still have to make do with roads like this. So where did all the money actually go? Mostly lost in corruption, a key reason for poverty in the country. The DRC is ranked 162 out of 180 on Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index. This basically means corruption is everywhere in the country, including in deals with multinational companies, whether European or Chinese. But it's not just outsiders to blame. So it's basically the DRC's leaders who have profited from the resources, and we're about to meet them. When it comes to the DRC's long history of exploitation, we kind of have to start with this man. King Leopold II of Belgium. In 1885, he seized this territory as his personal property and named it Congo Free State. It was anything but. An estimated 10 million Congolese were killed or died from hunger or disease during Leopold's cruel rule. Many were enslaved and forced to work collecting rubber, used for making car and bicycle tires. And the exploitation continued after 1908, when Belgium turned the Congo Free State into a colony. But in 1960, there was hope for a new start. This was the year the DRC gained independence, and its first Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba. Even today, many in the DRC see him as a national hero. Lumumba had a vision for a just nation. The country's natural resources should be used for the benefit of its citizens. But just months later, Lumumba was captured by his opponents and murdered, with the tacit backing of Belgium and the US. They wanted him out of the way, fearing he was getting too close to the Soviet Union during the Cold War.
So the Congo has never recovered from that tragedy. And I think this is the first reason why the country is in repeated cycles of trauma and crisis.
That's because dictator Joseph Désiré Mobutu ruled for 32 years. Mobutu, with his distinctive leopard print hat, renamed the country Zaire. And he grew eye-wateringly rich, looting the national coffers at the people's expense. Western countries, including the US, were willing to turn a blind eye. They wanted to keep him close to them and away from the Soviet Union because, you guessed it, they of course wanted priority access to the country's resources. Once, the US even sent Mobutu several planes in a bid to secure mining rights. He demanded that one of them be loaded with $60,000 worth of Coca-Cola.
The kleptocratic rule that was refined and perfected by Mobutu, unfortunately, it became part and parcel of how the country is governed.
And so it continued long after Mobutu, first under Laurent Kabila, then under his son Joseph, who was notoriously corrupt. Again, the DRC's mineral wealth was sold off to foreign investors, and at laughably low prices. When current President Félix Tshisekedi took office in 2019, he pledged to crack down on corruption. But both his elections were marred by fraud allegations, and for many people, not enough has changed. So, we've seen how corruption and exploitation stand in the way of a brighter future for Congolese people. But there's another major hurdle. In the east of the DRC, more than 120 different militias are active here. Yes, you've heard right, 120. Some of them are small local groups. Others are larger militias with foreign backing, like the M23 and the FDLR. We'll come back to them. These militias have different aims and agendas. And one way of financing those goals? Exactly. We're back to the minerals. Look at the provinces worst hit by the conflict: Ituri, North Kivu, and South Kivu. That's also where many of the DRC's valuable natural resources are found. Let's take this example. In 2024, M23 militants took over these mining sites near the town of Rubeya. This area is where most of the DRC's coltan comes from. Remember that one? It's one of the minerals needed in your smartphone. So, it's valuable and lucrative for any groups that can get their hands on it. But there's much more to this conflict. To unpack that, we need to go back in time and head to one of the DRC's neighbors, Rwanda, where in 1994 a brutal genocide was unfolding. One ethnic group had turned against another, the Hutu majority against the ruling Tutsi minority. During that time, many Rwandans fled across the border into the DRC. The aftermath of the Rwandan genocide still influences the conflict in eastern DRC today, and the blame game that surrounds it. Two of the biggest militias are proof of that. The FDLR started with those Hutu extremists linked to the genocide. Then there's the M23. Its members are mainly ethnic Tutsis, so the victims of the genocide. The DRC accuses Rwanda of supporting the M23, and the other way around. Rwanda says the DRC is working with the FDLR. Both governments deny that. Today, a further 7 million people in the DRC are internally displaced, the UN reports. Those people have lost everything. The Congolese army is supposed to contain the conflict, but they, like it seems everyone else, have faced allegations of human rights abuses and corruption. So, many people keep on suffering while others profit.
Congo has had neighbors that have not been good neighbors, neighbors that have exploited Congo's governance gaps.
There is no doubt that Rwanda benefits massively from the instability in the DRC. Most of the gold Rwanda exports is believed to be Congolese gold, smuggled across the border. And while the DRC is the world's biggest coltan producer, the biggest coltan exporter is Rwanda. But despite the smuggling, the European Union struck a controversial mineral deal with Rwanda. Local NGOs say this deal even fuels the conflicts. Rwanda is not the only place these resources get to. UN experts found gold and other minerals from the DRC were also being smuggled to Uganda, Burundi, Tanzania, and even the United Arab Emirates.
From there, they make their way into international markets or into the international black market.
And again, possibly into your smartphone. So, where are we at? International efforts to tackle these problems haven't worked. Ceasefire agreements have broken into pieces. The UN's biggest ever peacekeeping mission has largely failed. So, is there at least a little hope for the Congo?
Congo needs a democratic, legitimate government that is respected and given legitimacy by the people.
That's my message for today. Guys, I please ask you to join our forces, to join the podcast, to join every communication that we can do to send a great message. We can now start reaching out to maybe the US government, or maybe to the United Nations, or maybe to who else? Maybe to Vatican, or maybe to who? Everybody who is holding some crazy power right now, to China, to Russia, to anybody who is going to help us to put calm in Africa. We can start doing that. But let me tell you, we really have to save Africa right now. Thank you guys. I'll see you on the other side. Peace and love.